Lavinia's POV. Imperial Palace. Imperial Chamber after parade night. Now that I think about it, doesn't the female lead of this novel have black hair and shiny black eyes? Just like that girl in the crowd today. The one clutching her chest like her heart was trying to do cartwheels. The one not looking at me or Papa, but staring, completely mesmerized, at Osric. There are probably thousands of people with those features, I mumbled flatly, throwing myself back onto my bed like a heroine in a very tragic romance. Totally normal. Completely unrelated. Definitely not the start of some slow-burn, sword-crossed love story. Nope. Not at all. I buried my face into my pillow. Heart. The truth. The story probably wouldn't even start properly until I turned 15. Which meant I still had 5 long years to go. 5 years of royal etiquette classes, history scrolls longer than banquet tables, and having to behave like a refined symbol of national pride, even when I desperately wanted to kick things and eat cookies off the floor like a real person. Today had been amazing. The parade. The cheers. The explosion of phoenix kites. The scent of flowers, sugar and sun on every breeze. The boy who fainted at the sight of Marsher. Papa pretending he didn't love the attention, even though his imperial scowl softened every time I waved. I smiled up at the ceiling, limbs sprawled like lazy seaweed. I hope I can visit my cities more often, I whispered, half to the moon, half to myself. I want to see it all again. The people. The lights. Everything. What are you mumbling about by yourself now? Came a voice from the doorway. I yelped and sat bolt upright like the ceiling had shouted at me. Papa. I blinked. How long have you been standing there? He ignored the question, walked in with a book like a royal storm cloud wrapped in velvet, and sat beside me on the bed. Papa, I said sweetly, shifting gears immediately because subtlety is for court politics and not bedtime negotiations. Can I visit the cities more often? Maybe once a week. Papa raised a brow. Sure. My eyes lit up like festival lanterns. But not now, he added. Boom. Flicker. Lanterns out. Then when? I pouted. He hummed, a dangerous sound, usually reserved for moments before pronouncing judgment or deciding on dessert. Maybe, when you turn 15. I stared at him. For a second, I said slowly, I thought you were going to say, whenever there's a festival. He didn't respond, which meant he was going to say that, but changed course halfway through. Suspicious. Papa. I narrowed my eyes. What kind of festivals do we even celebrate in our kingdom? He leaned back slightly, crossing his arms like he was about to deliver a lecture with devastating seriousness. Many. I waited. He cleared his throat like he was preparing to recite ancient scrolls. There's the Lantern Festival, he began. Your first word festival. Your first step festival. Your first tooth festival. Your first royal decree festival. Your birthday festival, of course. Your first time holding a fork correctly festival. The day you didn't cry during bath time festival. What? I sat up so fast my crown nearly impaled the headboard. The day you weren't scared of the head-rolling execution reenactment festival. Papa continued smoothly, like he was reading a weather report. I blinked. We actually celebrate that? He gave me a very regal, very serious nod, his eyes glinting with obvious amusement. Indeed. A proud national milestone. You didn't cry. You didn't faint, he said, sipping non-existent wine like he was reliving the memory. The citizens threw petals. A marching band played. You were brave. The empire rejoiced. I stared at him slack-jawed. So what you're saying is, these are national holidays, he confirmed solemnly. With parades, fireworks, economic disruption, balloon vendors with inflated egos. I went utterly, completely, cosmically dumbfounded. I see. I whispered, eyes wide. So, basically, I'm the reason the kingdom's economy is crying itself to sleep. Papa gave me a look. Only mildly. Do the people know how many days off they get because of me? They do. They call you the saint of national holidays. I flopped back into bed with the most dramatic sigh a 10-year-old has ever sighed. I'm a menace in moon lace. You're our empress, Papa corrected gently, patting my head. I'm an expensive empress. Good things cost money. I blinked. So I'm a luxury item? Precisely. I groaned dramatically into my pillow. I can't believe there are so many national holidays dedicated to me. I flopped like a dying fish. I'm single-handedly responsible for half the empire's missed workdays and sugar shortages. I'm going to sleep before I learn I have a national first haircut celebration too. I declared, rolling over like I was done with this monarchy nonsense. He paused. I peeked out from under the blanket, my voice small and suspicious. Papa. He didn't even flinch. That one's next spring. I sat up like a ghost had yanked me. Why would you do that, Papa? He looked me dead in the eye. Unbothered. Completely unapologetic. Because, he said flatly, I am the emperor. I flopped back down with the weight of all royal burdens. I have no words. None. I'm going to sleep before I find out there's a national day of first hair tangle untangling. There was a pause. Then his voice, far too casual to be innocent, floated over. Don't you want the book? I peeked out from under my blanket. Book? What book? He reached into the folds of his cloak like some smug bedtime sorcerer and pulled out a large dusty tome, placing it dramatically in front of me. Here. This was written by the first emperor's assistant during his reign about Rakshar. Might find what you're looking for. Hope so. I blinked. Oh, right. I had questions. So many questions. About Marshar. His origins. His powers. His occasional judgmental growling. Will I actually get answers from here, Papa? Papa shrugged, sliding onto the bed beside me like this was all part of his royal bedtime routine. Gods no, he said lazily. I never read it. No one ever did. We mostly use it to flatten scrolls. I sat up and looked at the book. The cover was cracked leather, ancient and ominous, and embossed with the title in fading gold. Records of the Divine Companions. It looked old enough to crumble if I breathed on it too hard. The kind of book that probably hadn't been opened in centuries, full of secrets dust forgot existed. I reached for it carefully, heart skipping. Then Papa's hand darted out like a viper. Snap. He slammed the book shut. Sleep, he said firmly, already putting the book on the side table like I was an overly curious cat who couldn't be trusted. Papa. Tomorrow, he said, voice final. If you stay up now, you'll be a yawning royal disgrace at breakfast. I groaned, flopping back. Fine. I'll read about Marshy's secret immortal destiny and divine birthright tomorrow. He smirked. I huffed. Then I slid closer to him with a pout, burrowing beneath the blankets. But if the empire falls overnight because I didn't read that book in time, you'll still have to eat your vegetables at breakfast, he said smoothly. I groaned again, flopping back onto the pillows like a defeated warrior. Being a future empress is exhausting. Papa chuckled. One of those rare, deep ones that made him sound almost human. You'll live, he said, pulling the covers over both of us with regal efficiency. Barely, I muttered, snuggling into the warm blankets of inevitable doom. Then, with the kind of casual cruelty only a parent could wield, he reached over and patted my head like a particularly slow-learning apprentice. We'll be having a duel tomorrow. I flinched like someone had just thrown ice water down my back. Papa, wait, don't you think you're, testing your dearest daughter's sword skills a bit too soon after her emotionally taxing public debut as the Empire's glittering hope? No. His voice was flat. Final. Like a slammed door or a dropping guillotine. It's already late. Late. I echoed, horrified. I'm 10. I just turned 10 today. Your dearest, loveliest daughter turned 10, not 20. And, he replied deadpan. Some empresses go to war by 12. I flopped again, groaning dramatically into the pillow. Tomorrow is going to be a very hard day. Papa didn't disagree. He just smirked in that way he does, like he knows something the rest of the world doesn't, and resumed patting my head like I was some sleepy battle kitten in royal silk. And that's how the day ended. With a crown on the nightstand, a book full of forgotten legends by my side, and the promise of a sword duel before breakfast. Because apparently, being the Empress in training means you don't get days off. Not even after a parade. Imperial training grounds. Early morning, way too early. I was not ready. I was not emotionally ready. I was not physically ready. I was definitely not spiritually ready. And yet, there I was. In full training gear. A sword in one hand. sleep still clinging to my eyelashes like a stubborn ghost. And Papa was standing in front of me, looking like he'd already battled 10 armies and written a report about it before breakfast. "Are you awake?" he asked, his tone as flat as a scroll. I blinked, still drowsy. "I've been awake for exactly 17 minutes and 40 seconds, I muttered, rubbing my eyes. "My brain is still loading, Papa. I can barely remember which end of the sword is the stabby part." "Good," he said calmly, completely ignoring the tragic state of my existence. "That's about as long as it takes for someone to ambush you in real life." I groaned. Seriously, who gave him the idea that early morning sword fights were character development? Who does this? Why does he do this? He woke me up before the sun, saying, "Let's go check your homework." That was a lie. A brutal, glitter-wrapped lie. Ravik was standing beside us, arms crossed, watching us like we were a drama he regretted buying tickets for. Marshall was blinking blearily from the corner like he deeply resented everyone involved. "Papa," I whimpered, dragging my feet, "let's start with warm-up first. Like, walking in a straight line without tripping." Papa walked over and tapped the flat of his sword against mine with zero sympathy. "You already know how to walk. Now you'll learn how to fight." I scowled. "You make that sound so simple." "It is," he said with a shrug. "Defend yourself." "Wait, fuck." I yelped as our swords collided, barely in time. The shock rattled down my arms like lightning in a teacup. My feet skidded back, barely holding ground. "Papa." That was a warning. That was a declaration of war. He didn't even blink. "You have to be ready. Your enemy won't wait for you to finish yawning. I'm your daughter. And your enemy might not care." I glared at him through sleep-heavy lashes. "You are the worst pillow replacement I've ever had." He smirked. Like this was funny. Which it was not. It was cruel. Vicious. Barbaric. He took a graceful step back and gestured again, calm as moonlight. "Come. Show me what you've learned from the last 3 years." I sighed with the force of a dying comet and lifted my sword. This better count as physical education credit. I lunged. Papa parried me again, easily. Too easily. Like he was brushing dust off his sleeve. I stumbled and caught myself just before falling face-first into the dirt. "Again," he said, voice patient but firm. I swung. He blocked. I tried to dodge. He advanced. His strikes were fast but always controlled. Never too hard, never aiming to hurt me. Just enough to test me. Push me. Make me stronger. Sweat began to form on my forehead. My arms ached. My feet fumbled over gravel. But I didn't stop. Again. He spun away and I barely saw it coming. His sword swept low, aimed for my knees, not to strike but to force me to jump. I squeaked and leapt, awkwardly, then tripped over my own foot and landed on one knee with a graceless huff. He didn't laugh. He offered no sarcastic comment. He simply extended a hand and pulled me to my feet. His eyes, always steel and frost, softened just a fraction. "Lavinia," he said, quieter now. "There will always be knights to guard the gates. Commanders to ride at your side. Generals to lead your armies." I panted, leaning slightly on my sword. "But a ruler," he continued, "must never forget that they are still human. And humans bleed." He stepped back, resting the tip of his blade against the earth. If someone were to breach the throne room, if every knight fell, if no one remained. His gaze locked with mine. Fierce. Proud. Unbreakable. "You must still stand. You must still protect yourself. Fight. Life. End it if you must." My heartbeat echoed in my ears. "Strength," he said, "is not about swinging hardest. It's about being the last one standing." The wind rustled the trees overhead. I stood breathless, sword heavy in my hand. "I'm still learning," I whispered. "And you will learn," he said. "'Cause you're my daughter. And one day you're going to be stronger than anyone." His words sank into my chest like a glowing ember. And even though I was tired and sore and thoroughly done with mornings in general, something inside me shifted. "I'm not letting you win next time," I mumbled, lifting my sword again. He smirked, sharp, proud, and just a little fond. "Good," he said, voice low with approval. "That's what I expect from you." Then gently, unexpectedly, he reached out and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His touch was warm and grounding. Remember this, Lavinia, he said, his gaze locking with mine. You must become the strongest. So strong that no coward, no traitor, no would-be assassin dares to even think of harming you. His voice grew quieter, heavier. That's how a ruler survives. That's how a ruler reigns. Strong. Unyielding. Feared when necessary, but tender, if only to a chosen few. I stared at him. It was strange, the way he said it. Like he wasn't just telling me what to become. He was confessing what he already is. Cruel, yes. The world calls him a tyrant. But I've also seen the laws he enforces. The ones that shield the poor, protect the weak, and punish the greedy nobles who once bled the people dry. The way the citizens cheered for him during the parade. They didn't just fear him. They believed in him. And in that moment I realized something. No matter how cold Papa acts, no matter how terrifying he looks on the battlefield, there's a reason his empire stands stronger than any other. Because he carries it, every inch of it, on his own two shoulders. I smiled up at him, soft but certain. I'll make sure I become like you, Papa, I said quietly. Maybe even better. For a second his expression faltered. Just a flicker. Barely there. But then he smiled, genuine, rare and quiet. The kind that made the morning sun feel a little warmer. Shall we have breakfast? He asked. I grinned, slinging my sword over my shoulder like a true warrior princess. Only if there's jam. He chuckled, saying, sure. Imperial Palace, study room later. After breakfast I barely survived 2 full hours of royal history, political geography, and what I can only describe as the art of sitting still without losing your soul. As soon as the lessons ended, I stretched my arms like I was reaching for another dimension. My spine cracked. My soul wept. My brain leaked out slightly. Teacher Evelyn gave me a gentle, knowing smile. You look tired, princess. I groaned and flopped forward dramatically onto the table, cheeks smushed against my notes. Papa woke me at the crack of dawn for sword practice, I mumbled. Now I'm sleepy, but also weirdly too annoyed to nap. What kind of pathetic emotional contradiction is this? Teacher Evelyn chuckled. Sounds like His Majesty is making sure our future Empress is diligent, not drowsy. I cracked one eye open and scowled playfully. But I am responsible. She raised a single elegant brow. Responsible, yes. But only about 20%. The other 80%. She leaned in. Gloriously lazy. Tisich, rude. And tragically accurate. I can't even argue, I mumbled into the desk. Teacher Evelyn laughed softly. Then she gave a formal bow. Well then, I'll take my leave, princess. Do rest well. I gave a sleepy salute. Take care, teacher. She exited gracefully, the train of her robes whispering behind her like petals in the wind. I sighed and slumped into Marcia, who was lying curled up beside the bookshelves like a fluffy cloud with teeth. Let's go, Marcia. He groaned in protest, probably because I was using him as mobile furniture, but stood anyway, loyal and grumbly. As we stepped into the hallway, Ravik was already standing outside. He fell into step beside us. Where are we headed, princess? I yawned. To my chamber. I'm going to read that dusty old book Papa brought me. The one about divine beasts and tea stains. Ravik nodded, expression unreadable as always. But as we passed the arched corridor facing the garden, I stopped, paused, squinted. Wait, didn't Teacher Evelyn just leave? Ravik followed my gaze and frowned slightly. She did. Then why is she in the garden? I asked, pointing. And more importantly, why is she blushing so hard she might explode? Her usually porcelain face was now brighter than strawberry glaze. She had her hands tucked behind her back and was smiling shyly at someone out of view. Is she talking to someone? I whispered. She is, Ravik muttered, narrowing his eyes like he was assessing a security breach. But I can't see who. I gasped. Ravik. Yes. She's blushing like she's talking to her boyfriend. Ravik blinked. Then his eyes widened. Then we both ducked behind a nearby pillar with military-level urgency. Even Marcia crouched, poorly, trying to blend in despite his giant glowing body being the exact opposite of subtle. I peeked around the marble. Still couldn't see. Too many roses, I whispered. We need a better angle, Ravik said, all spy mode now. If we move behind that tree we'll get a clearer view. I nodded solemnly. Operation Forbidden Garden Romance is a go. We shuffled like elite squirrels across the lawn, hid behind a bush, then moved again, finally ducking behind a wide cherry blossom tree just 10 feet from Teacher Evelyn. I slowly, dramatically, peeked around the trunk. And that's when we saw him. Firking. Looking just as hopelessly charmed as she was. Me and Ravik gasped at the exact same time, eyes wide, voices barely above a horrified whisper. Thean. Imperial Garden. 10 minutes into Operation Forbidden Garden Romance. Thean. I gasped so loudly I startled a sparrow into cardiac arrest. Ravik clapped a hand over my mouth. Princess, quiet. But it was too late. I'd already declared a national emergency. I slapped his hand away and peeked again around the cherry blossom tree, eyes squinted like I was peering into a scandalous novella. Teacher Evelyn was still there. Still blushing. Still giggling. Still standing way too close to Thean. And he was smiling at her. That's right, smiling. Not smirking. Not raising one skeptical eyebrow. A real, actual, almost boyish smile. I was scandalized. Positively scandalized. I knew it, I whispered to Ravik. There was no way she left the study room in that much of a hurry just because she has to reach her estate soon. Princess, Ravik warned softly, we should go. This is private. Private. I turned to him offended. Ravik. She's a royal tutor. He's an emperor's personal assistant. This is basically state business. Ravik gave me a look that said, no it isn't. I gave him a look that said, you cannot stop me. We peeked again. Teacher Evelyn had her hands clasped in front of her like a maiden from a love poem. Thean reached out and tucked a strand of her pink cotton candy hair behind her ear. My soul exited my body. He did the hair tuck. I hissed like an ancient spirit witnessing a royal scandal unfold. He tucked the hair, Ravik. I was barely holding myself together. My entire soul had just been personally slapped by destiny. My heart was doing somersaults. My knees had betrayed me. My brain was singing operatic betrayal music on loop. That's practically a marriage proposal in ancient court language. I gasped, clutching Ravik's sleeve like we were watching a forbidden love drama unravel live, uncensored and in 4K. Ravik sighed, his expression torn between deep shame and deeper curiosity. Princess, we really shouldn't. Sure. I threw a dramatic hand in front of his face like I was a tragic heroine silencing a servant during an elopement scene. This is the most important mission of our lives, Ravik. We are witnesses. No, guardians. Of forbidden imperial romance. But before I could dramatically dive into another bush for better surveillance, I was airborne. I yelped. Like actually yelped. Wah, what is happening? I flailed and hissed, limbs spaghettingy in every direction. The ground was no longer beneath me. My feet were dangling. The roses were shrinking. I looked down in a panic and saw Ravik. Holding me. Like a sack of mildly offended potatoes. He had me hoisted under one arm like I was light luggage and he was late for a royal train. Ravik. I hissed again. We're leaving, he said calmly, already tiptoeing backward like a rogue butler escaping a scandalous ballroom. Wait, traitor. I wailed, squirming like a chaotic shrimp. I am still collecting evidence. The Empire has a right to know. You're 10, Ravik said grimly, dashing through the hedges with the grace of a man trying very hard not to drop a squirming toddler empress. Emotional age is irrelevant. I hissed. Thean tucked her hair. You also once cried because your soup had too many croutons, he grunted as he dodged a statue. That was one time. And they were soggy. We zipped past a couple of startled gardeners, who froze mid-rake as I sailed by like a royal comet of indignation. Put me down this instant. I shrieked, kicking the air. This is abuse of power. I am going to file a very dramatic complaint. You're literally the only one I answer to, Ravik replied. Then I demand you listen to me. No. I'll knight Marsher in your place. That's a giant beast. He has better emotional range than you. He also ate a pillow this morning. It was a symbolic sacrifice. Ravik sighed again, clearly regretting every life decision that led him to this moment. He finally stopped near the hallway back to my chambers and, thankfully, gently set me down like a grumpy sack of royal dignity. I immediately dropped to my knees, face to the sky. You've ruined it. I was so close to uncovering the courtship secrets of our generation. I was going to write poetry, gossip scrolls, possibly a tragic ballad. Ravik didn't even blink. You were about to fall into a bush and possibly startle Theon into a combat stance. Even better. I cried. That would have made chapter 3 of Lovers under lock and scroll. Marcia arrived behind us, tongue lolling, tail wagging like he'd just witnessed the most entertaining royal soap opera of the season. Then Ravik turned to me with that maddeningly composed expression. Princess, please. Return to your chamber. Or else, he paused meaningfully, I will have no choice but to inform His Majesty. I blinked. He leaned closer and finished calmly, that you were hiding behind shrubbery, spying on 2 adults blushing and whispering sweet nothings under royal sunlight. I froze. My entire soul froze. Even Marcia stopped wagging. You wouldn't, I whispered, horrified. Ravik blinked once. Fully. Like a man who would absolutely do exactly that. Damn it. If Papa finds out, he'll ban dating. He'll call it a security threat. He'll pass a royal decree of eternal singlehood. He'll assign government chaperones, personal romance guards, emotional security squads. There'll be love licenses, love taxes, and worst of all, I'll become the villain in every palace love story ever told. Lavinia the lurker, the gossip killer, the royal romance reaper. I can't believe Ravik is behaving like my unofficial dad. The very tall, extremely annoying, smirking kind. I glanced at him. Yup. He was smirking. Smirking like the smug winner of a duel fought with honor, shame, and a bush full of regrets. I groaned long and loud, tossing my arms into the air like a defeated playwright. Fine. I'll be in my chamber, I grumbled, stomping off with all the grace of a cat that had just been sprayed with cold water. Studying. Like a tragic scholar princess, abandoned by gossip, betrayed by love, deprived of my birthright, drama. Ravik didn't respond. But I could feel it. His victory aura was following me. Smug. Radiant. Judgy. I swear, next time I'm recruiting the royal pastry chef. That guy knows things. Imperial chamber. Afternoon, several snacks later. Back in my room, I finally settled cross-legged on the soft rug. The book Papa gave me placed reverently before me like it held all the secrets of the world. Which, to be fair, it might. The cracked leather cover gave off a faint scent of cinnamon and something older. Something secret way. Marcia lay nearby like a sleepy oven with paws, his tail swishing lazily, while Ravik had stationed himself by the door, arms crossed, looking like he was guarding the gateway to Mount Doom. I can't believe I was forcibly removed from an active romance plot, I mumbled dramatically, flipping open the ancient tome. History better be worth it. The yellowed pages crackled softly beneath my fingers, the ink still sharp despite the age. Elegant curling strokes and stern lines like they'd been written by a very serious man with a very dramatic quill. The title page read, Records of the Divine Companions. Observations by the First Emperor's Assistant Quillan of Argis. Sounds boring, I muttered, unimpressed. Then flipped the page. The first entry was strange. The beast appeared during a storm in the jungle. The Emperor touched its head, and the sky stopped howling. I believe it recognized him as one of its own. No one knew where it came from. But it stayed. As though it always had. I frowned. Well, I know that First Emperor found Rakshar in the jungle. Wounded. But this says he wasn't just found, he recognized him. I turned another page, curiosity creeping in. The beast was named Rakshar. The Archmage has confirmed, Rakshar hatches from an egg. But not for just anyone. It waits. It waits for its chosen. The bond is not taught. It is not trained. It is fate. My gaze flicked to Marcia, who blinked at me, unfazed and slightly offended by the air. Fated. I murmured, voice low. That means, me and Marcia? He yawned like a dramatic beast with nothing to prove and everything to keep secret. I flipped more pages. The Rakshar's power does not lie in chaos, but in restraint. It will not display its strength unless provoked. Unless its master's life hangs by a thread or when his master needs it. And when it awakens, the world bends to its command. Fire is its language. Ash is its warning. It is not summoned by need. It is summoned by bond. My fingers froze mid-turn. The Rakshar and its master are mirrors. One born of fire, the other of flesh. They resemble each other not in form but in soul. The room suddenly felt quieter. Heavier. Like the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. I looked back at Marcia, who was now wide awake, watching me with eyes that looked older than they should be. I swallowed, heart thudding. "You're so mysterious, aren't you?" I whispered. He blinked slowly. Didn't answer. Of course. I flipped to the next page. Then stopped. Midway down the parchment, scrawled in a more hurried, almost frantic handwriting. "And it is said that the Rakshar possesses one strange ability. It has the ability to bend the thread of fate itself when the bond is strong enough. But at a price." I blinked. "Ability to bend a fate?" I whispered. "What does that even mean?" Lavinia's POV. Imperial Chamber, still processing fate-bending nonsense. I stared at the page. Then blinked. Then stared harder, like maybe, just maybe, the ink would get uncomfortable and start explaining itself. Bend the thread of fate itself when the bond is strong enough. But at a price. First of all, what price? Second of all, what price? Third of all, why is there never a helpful footnote when you actually need one? I closed the book slowly. Carefully. Like I was sealing away a cursed scroll that might explode if I looked at it wrong. Then, with the subtlety of a suspicious cat, I opened it again, just to make sure I didn't imagine it. Nope. Still there. Still dramatic. Still offering zero explanations. Just more ancient mystery scribbled by Quillen, the overdramatic scribe of doom. With a sigh of equal parts dread and caffeine withdrawal, I turned to Marcia. And there he was, yawning. The absolute audacity. Here I was, having an existential crisis, and he was out here acting like it was nap o'clock on Fireball Island. I stomped over and grabbed his giant fluffy cheeks in both hands, squishy and warm like toasted marshmallows. He blinked. I squinted. What even are you? A fire beast? A secret fate-weaving creature from beyond the stars? Or just a glorified foot-warmer with big eyes and dramatic silences? Another blink. Slow. Knowing. Infuriating. I released his face with a soft, tragic sigh and plopped back down onto the carpet. "The book says you have the power of fire," I told him seriously, as if this would finally get him to react like a dragon in a fairy tale. He blinked again. I narrowed my eyes. Harder this time. More commanding. More chosen one. Why? Then I stood, dramatically might I add, gathered all the sacred seriousness I could summon, raised my arms to the ceiling, and yelled with righteous, magical intensity. "Marshy! Fiery-y!" He blinked. Then blinked again. Then he flopped onto his side with a sleepy grunt and tucked his tail over his nose like I wasn't even worth dignifying with a response. Rude. It was the kind of silent, judgmental movement that clearly translated to, "She's lost it. The princess has gone full firecracker." I flopped down next to him with a defeated groan. "Ugh. I really thought you'd breathe fire or something. Just a little puff? A flicker? A spark? Anything." Nothing. I stared up at the ceiling. Maybe I'm the problem. Marcia let out a snore like a soft "you think." I sat back up, grabbed the book again and muttered, "Threads of fate, huh?" My fingers ran over the old lettering. The words still pulsed with weight, with purpose, with whatever spooky prophecy energy Quillen apparently mainlined. Only one person can tell me what any of this actually means, I decided aloud, clutching the book to my chest. Brother Lysandra. He was the only one who would tell me everything and wouldn't laugh or lecture, and since he is the Archmage, he might have answers. I was halfway across the room, already ready to scribble a letter demanding urgent clarification and dramatic tea-time conversation, when the door creaked open. Morella stepped in, polite and composed as always. "Princess," she said, dipping her head. "Lord Osric has arrived. He wishes to speak with you." I froze. "Osric?" I blinked. She nodded once. "Yes, Your Highness. He's waiting in the East guest chamber." I stared at her for a long, suspicious moment. Voluntarily. Morella tilted her head slightly. "It would seem so. Imperial Palace. East guest chamber where drama clearly lives." That was weird. I tucked the Fire Beast fate-bending book into the back of my mind and followed her down the corridor. "Osric could have met me during practice," I muttered. "So why is he arriving like a proper guest today? With formality, In the daylight, like a responsible human, Morella offered one of those vague, all-knowing little smiles. Perhaps because today he's not here as your friend, but as the young lord of House Everhart. I blinked. I see. I reached the chamber just as the double doors swung open on well-oiled hinges, and immediately sensed it. Papa was already seated, exuding his signature Ice Emperor disapproves of your whole existence energy. He was glaring at Osric like he wanted to turn him into a tax form. Across from them sat Grand Duke Regis, sipping tea and smirking like he knew the ending to a tragic romance and was thrilled about it. And Osric? He was sitting beside the Grand Duke, looking ridiculously composed for someone whose hair naturally curled like a halo and whose dimples could start rebellions. The moment I entered, all three men turned to look at me. Papa's expression softened for exactly 0.3 seconds before returning to death glare mode. Grand Duke Regis rose and gave a courteous bow. "Greetings, Your Highness." Osric bowed too, voice smooth and polite. "It's good to see you, Princess." "Greetings, Grand Duke Regis, and young Lord of Everhart," I said with a gentle smile. I offered a practiced smile and floated down into the seat beside Papa. His jaw was so tight you could have cracked walnuts on it. And Papa keeps teeth under his breath as he keeps glancing at Osric and Grand Duke Regis. Well, he's so pissed he's making consonant sounds. Now, I wonder what all this is about. Osric didn't seem fazed. In fact, he smiled at me, a soft, genuine smile that had no business being that charming. I fought a blush like it was a duel to the death. This is not the time to melt, Lavinia. Be strong. Be imperial. Be less hormonal. "So," I said very calmly, very diplomatically, "is there something important you wish to discuss?" Osric's eyes twinkled and he reached into his coat and slid something across the table. A sleek, golden envelope with the Everhart crest stamped in red wax. "I would like to invite Her Highness," he said, "to my coming-of-age ceremony." "Oh right. He just turned 16. I smiled and nodded. "Of course. I'd be honored to attend." Osric's smile widened and for half a second, just a second, everything felt warm and pleasant and fine. And then, Annoying," Papa muttered beside me. I flinched. "There it is." I turned slowly, carefully. Papa was fuming. Not loudly, but in that cold, quiet, scary way that made the room temperature drop by 3 degrees. Why was he like this? Was it because I accepted the invitation? I'm the crown princess. I'm supposed to attend high noble events. The Grand Duke Regis smiled over the rim of his teacup. That smile. It was up to something. It was the kind of smile a cat wears right before it pushes a priceless vase off the table. "I suppose," he said ever so casually, "the princess will need to begin practicing her dances." I blinked. "Excuse me? What do you mean?" He turned to me with that same gleam in his eyes. "Well," he said, "surely you know the tradition? According to imperial law and historical precedent, the heir of the Grand Duke's house must share his first dance with the princess." I blinked. Then blinked again. Then slowly turned to Papa. He was glaring at Grand Duke Regis like he wanted to challenge him to a duel using live snakes. "I should ban this law too," Papa muttered through gritted teeth. Grand Duke Regis chuckled like he was having so much fun watching my father combust. "You know," he said mildly, "there are laws, Your Majesty, that even you cannot change. Not without rewriting the entire imperial constitution." Papa's glare intensified. It was no longer just a glare. No, this was a full-blown psychic laser beam of overprotective rage aimed directly at poor, politely smiling Osric. I could practically see the heat waves rippling through the air between them. Meanwhile, my brain was still rebooting. Dance. First dance. With Osric. At his coming-of-age ceremony. In front of literally every noble in the empire. My stomach did a tiny somersault for some reason. My hands, neatly folded in my lap, twitched slightly. I looked at Osric again, his face still calm, still wearing that gentle, annoyingly handsome smile like it was carved from golden sunlight and royal privilege. I blinked. He blinked. Our eyes met. I nearly forgot how to inhale. My first dance is going to be with Osric Everhart? The boy who once fell face first into a fountain while trying to impress me with his fencing form? The boy who now looked like a painting come to life? What kind of poetic twist of fate was this? I turned to Papa slowly, like a kitten expecting to be squirted with water. His jaw was clenched, his fingers curled tight on the armrest, and his aura was giving off, "I will set tradition on fire if it even looks at my daughter wrong" energy. Grand Duke Regis was smirking. Osric was waiting. The silence was tightening. And I just sat there thinking, I never imagined my first dance would be with Osric either. And yet, here we are. Lavinia's POV. Imperial Palace. Practice room, a dance floor of doom. Uchich. Theon let out a very dramatic, very manly yelp as I once again landed my heel squarely on his foot for what had to be the 5th time. "Princess," he groaned, hopping slightly on one leg like a limping knight, Are you trying to stab my poor legs with your heels?" I gasped in mock horror. "How dare you accuse me of such villainy?" He pointed accusingly at his now wounded pride and toes. "You aimed for it, Your Highness. That was a precision strike." I quickly turned to Lady Evelyn, who was watching us with that serene teacher expression that said, "I'm too elegant to get involved in this chaos." I jabbed a finger toward her like I was exposing a traitor at court. It was her. "She's teaching me wrong." Theon blinked. "Wait, what?" "She's deliberately setting me up to fail," I declared, arms crossed dramatically. "Look at those moves. Too spinny. Too swooshy." Lady Evelyn blinked, still graceful, still unreadable. Theon looked scandalized. "Princess, you can't just accuse her." I turned to him slowly, raising one brow like I was about to recite a royal decree. "Why can't I?" Because, he stammered, already regretting everything. I leaned forward with a dangerous grin. "Don't forget, Theon, I'm the crown princess. I can do anything." Behind him, Ravik let out a low, choking laugh he tried and failed to disguise as a cough. Theon wailed like an emotionally betrayed potato. "That's a power misuse. You're turning into the Emperor." I flipped my hair and said flatly, "Because I am his daughter, duh." He stared at me, horrified, like he just watched me set democracy on fire with a tiara. "Goddess above," he whispered. "There's 2 of them now." I smirked. Lady Evelyn finally spoke, ever so gently, "Your Highness, perhaps we should try the waltz without pointy threats to your partner's feet." "Agreed," Theon groaned, rubbing his toes like a wounded soldier. "But this is your fault," I added sweetly. "How?" he cried. "Because," I said, spinning away with a swirl of skirt and sass, "you agreed to help." Ravik, now leaning against the pillar, was shaking with silent laughter. The only reason he hadn't completely lost it was probably because Morella and Nanny were watching with very deeply concerned expressions. Bless them. They still didn't know the full story. The secret rose bush scandal. The hidden blushing. The tucked hair. Theon's protective instincts. Lady Evelyn's poetry sighs. Oh yes. Only Ravik and I had witnessed the forbidden imperial romance blooming like spring behind the cherry blossoms. Just as Theon was still nursing his tragically bruised pride, and his even more tragically bruised foot, the grand double doors creaked open with the ominous elegance of a thundercloud crashing in afternoon tea. Everyone in the room froze. Except for me. Vezin stepped. His Majesty. The Emperor. Ice King Supreme. Professional mood killer of all romantically chaotic activities. Every person in that room instantly straightened up like marionettes on royal strings. Bows happened. Curtsies happened. Even Marsher, who was not technically in the room, somehow sensed the shift in power and sneezed in solidarity from 2 corridors away. Papa's gaze swept over us with that sharp, glacial calm that could silence an orchestra. His voice was cold velvet as he asked, "What's going on here?" I twirled dramatically, like an over-caffeinated fairy at a kingdom ball, and sang sweetly, "I'm practicing dance, Papa." Papa twitched. Like visibly. And then, under his breath but not quiet enough, he growled, "I can't believe that bastard will be holding my daughter's hand." But there it is. He's still in a full emotional tailspin over my upcoming dance with Osric. Plus parenting, honestly. Unbothered, I floated over to him like a diplomatic cherub and said with the sweetest of grins, "Papa, do you want to practice with me?" He blinked. Stared at me. His mouth twitched like he was trying not to combust. Before he could answer, "Don't, Your Majesty." Theon wailed from across the room like a knight who'd just witnessed a tragedy. He limped toward us like an injured war hero, one hand on his heart, the other dramatically pointing at me like I'd committed a high crime against his person. "Your Majesty," he said with the most betrayed voice in the Empire, "with all due respect, your daughter just stepped on my foot." He paused, then added in the most heartbroken, soul-destroyed Shakespearean way imaginable. Deliberately. The room fell silent. Even the curtains stopped swaying. Time itself took a polite step back. I didn't react. I just stared at him. Like, really? We're doing this? And Papa, he didn't blink. He didn't twitch. He didn't even flinch. He just coldly replied in that deathly calm emperor tone that made warlords tremble and diplomats reconsider their life choices. "Perhaps your foot should learn to move faster." Dead. Silence. Theon's mouth dropped open like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Lady Evelyn gasped into her fan and then snorted. Yes. Snorted. She tried to cover it with a cough, but the damage was done. Nanny looked horrified. Morella looked like she was internally screaming. Ravik looked like he was trying not to laugh so hard he'd pull a muscle. Even the harpsichord in the corner might have wheezed. I folded my arms and turned back to Theon with a perfectly royal blink. "Well, that settles that. You really are turning into the Emperor," Theon muttered, completely offended and absolutely terrified. I smiled up at Papa sweetly, lacing my voice with just the right amount of mock offense. "Is that a compliment?" Papa didn't even hesitate. "It is," he said flatly, folding his arms. Then tilting his head toward poor Theon, he added coolly, "And I can confirm it directly from him." Theon looked like someone had just publicly declared him the founding member of the National Defeated Knights Association. He blinked. Twice. Then dramatically limped to the corner like a wounded war hero retreating into exile. "I am done," he announced mournfully, plopping onto a bench like it had personally betrayed him. "I am not practicing anymore. Not until I have protective footwear and a signed letter of apology from the crown." I chuckled, folding my arms smugly as I watched him curl into his grumpy little foot-hurt cocoon. Then I turned to Papa, eyes glinting. "Papa, shall we practice?" He blinked at me, surprised. "We." I held out my hand with all the royal grace of a fairy tale heroine preparing to charm a reluctant ogre. "Yes. Me. Dramatic music. Imperial bonding. Come on." Papa sighed, but there was a tiny flicker of amusement in his eyes as he took my hand. And then, whoosh, he twirled me. Hard. The wind screamed past my ears. My braid nearly took flight. I spun so fast I saw my own past lives. "Papa!" I yelped. "You're twirling me like I'm a battle axe." He smirked. "It's not too fast. You're too slow." What? How dare?" I stumbled mid-spin, catching my balance just in time to glare at him with maximum wounded drama. "Are you trying to injure your dearest, most beautiful, most charming daughter? The future of the Empire." Papa raised one brow. "If that's how you dance in public, I may reconsider the future part." I gasped. Loudly. Like I was in a court play titled Betrayed by My Own Father. A Lavinian tragedy. "I will have you know I am the epitome of ballroom elegance," I declared, huffing. Then pointed firmly to my left. "Ravik. You're dancing with me. Let's show the Emperor what grace actually looks like." Ravik, who had been watching all this with his usual barely suppressed amusement, bowed low. "As Her Highness commands." He stepped forward, hand outstretched, expression composed. But I caught the mischievous twinkle in his eye. Oh, he knew this was going to be fun. I placed my hand in his with the elegance of a girl who absolutely hadn't just spun like a confused flamingo. We began to move. Fully. Gracefully. Our steps were light, practiced, and in sync. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. No crushed toes. No tragic yelps. No dying knights in corners. Lady Evelyn clutched her fan with delight. She did it. Morella blinked. Papa was watching. Closely. His arms were folded. His expression was unreadable. But his eyebrow, that royal brow of doom, it twitched. "Oh yes. Victory." I turned my head slightly and whispered to Ravik, just loud enough for Papa to hear. "See? I can dance. Just needed a better partner." Papa exhaled. Long and slow. "I'm rewriting the ballroom laws." I let out a tiny victorious giggle. Ravik smirked behind his professional poker face. And then A deep, soul-weary sigh echoed from the corner. Finally, he muttered, flopping back dramatically against the wall. Now I can have time with Lady Evelyn. The room froze. Like literally froze. I swear the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Even Marcia stopped snoring in the hallway. Lady Evelyn blinked like someone had just thrown cold water on her tea. I blinked. Ravik blinked. Even Morella dropped her fan. I cleared my throat. He slipped out. Ravik said without blinking. I agree, it was a slip. Papa's glare intensified. Like solar flare levels of intensity. His voice came out low. Dangerous. What did you just say? Theon's eyes widened in real-time horror. He looked like a man who had just remembered he was standing on a minefield. I didn't mean, what I meant was I was talking about, tea. With, books. Papa stood straighter. Theon panicked. And then he blurted. Loud. Clear. Bold. I am gonna marry her in the future. Silence. Total. Utter. Silence. Then the shuffle of his boots as Theon bolted out of the room like a man escaping his own execution. Lady Evelyn stood frozen. Morella gasped. Ravik blinked twice. Papa's soul momentarily left his body. And I smiled like a little chaos gremlin who had just been served the spiciest gossip of the decade. This was so going into my journal. Lavinia's POV. Imperial Palace. Throne corridor of immediate aftermath. Theon ran like his entire bloodline depended on it. And honestly, probably did. Papa was still frozen in place, his expression somewhere between "did I hear that right?" and "time to declare war on Theon." Morella and Nanny stood clutching their hearts like they were holy relics. Lady Evelyn looked like she wanted to vanish into a tea kettle. Me. I was still smiling. Like a little chaos gremlin who just got handed front row seats to a romantic meltdown and imperial overreaction. Ravik cleared his throat beside me. Well, he said with a straight face, that escalated with historical efficiency. Papa finally moved. Very slowly. Like a glacier about to destroy a city. I'll kill him, he muttered. Technically, I said cheerfully, you can't. He's a noble heir. There's paperwork. I'll file it. Papa. I'll invent a law if I have to. Papa, I said again, trying to soothe the brewing storm. He's just enthusiastic. He's delusional. He's in love, I sang. Isn't that sweet? Papa turned to me with the expression of a man who had been personally betrayed by the concept of romance. Love makes fools of men. True, I chirped, but it makes excellent poetry. Lavinia. Yes. I asked innocently. Papa turned slowly, dramatically, like the villain in a tragic play who just discovered betrayal most foul. I want you to stay at least 3 meters away from Theon at all times. Preferably in different wings. Possibly, countries. I placed a hand on my chest, blinking with mock horror. Papa. Can you even survive without me if I go live in a different country? He flinched. Visibly. Then he muttered like a man on the edge. I should have banned courtship rituals ages ago. They're making my daughter's brain rot. I chuckled. And right on cue, Lady Evelyn, still frozen in her pink, blushing, daydream-soaked expression, looked so pink it was medically concerning. Someone check her pulse. Her face was a strawberry sorbet. A walking bouquet of blush. Morella leaned toward Nanny and whispered, should I fetch the Imperial Heart Tonic now or wait for someone to faint? Nanny stared at Lady Evelyn. Bring 2. 1 for her, 1 for His Majesty. Papa meanwhile was vibrating. Like truly. Not shaking with rage. Vibrating with the spiritual force of 17 volcanoes and 1 disapproving grandfather. And then he snapped. Catch that bastard. The royal doors burst open with the force of an imperial hurricane as Papa stormed out like a one-man cavalry charge. His voice echoed down the marble hallway like thunder during Judgment Day. He's a traitor to my peace of mind. Steel boots clanked. Capes flared. The Imperial Guards, having trained their entire lives for potential assassination attempts, uprisings and border disputes, were now sprinting full speed, after one panicked teenager. From somewhere down the corridor we heard, Gah, Your Majesty. I am not a traitor. I'm just in love. It's the same thing. Papa yelled. More boot clanks. A startled bird flew out the window. Possibly an omen. I turned to Ravik. Do you think he'll actually catch him? Ravik considered this with the gravity of a scholar. Theon does run surprisingly fast when in mortal terror. But his majesty is fueled by paternal rage, which is a terrifying energy source. I sighed dreamily. Ah, young love. Lady Evelyn swayed again. Morella whispered, maybe 3 tonics. Nanny replied, and a mop. And as Papa's war cry continued to echo through the halls, I turned back to the stunned practice room, smiled sweetly and clapped my hands. Well, I said. Who's ready for another dance round? Imperial Palace, dressing chamber of destiny and drama. The day had arrived. The grand coming-of-age ceremony of Lord Osric Everhart. Honestly, it came faster than expected. One moment I was tripping on Theon's toes in the practice hall, and the next, I was being smothered in violet silk and royal expectations. All right, you're ready, Nanny announced with a clap, her smile stretching ear to ear like she'd personally sewn every thread into the fabric of my future. I turned slowly, carefully, because this gown was not here to play. It shimmered in deep violet, the imperial shade of House Solstice, layered with silvery lace that trailed down the hem like stardust was stitched into every inch. The sleeves? Soft, flowing, woven from dreams. The neckline gently kissed my collarbone with that effortless princess chic Nanny always insisted on. My hair. Morella's masterpiece. Braided with perfect precision and threaded with tiny moonlight white pearls that twinkled like constellations in my curls. And of course, atop it all sat a tiara. Elegant. Delicate. Sharp enough to stab someone if needed. I tilted my head at the mirror and whispered, half amused, half in awe, I look like I walked out of a storybook, and probably stole the author's pen. I mean, let's be honest, I looked divine. Huh. No, Lavinia. Pull it back. No self-obsessed monologues today. That's what diaries are for. Just then I heard the soft sound of paws padding across marble. Oh no. Don't you dare, I warned without turning. Too late. Marsher, my oversized cinnamon roll fire beast of a furball, strutted into the room like he was royalty and I was his opening act. His tail swished dramatically behind him as he approached with the most offended, judgmental look any creature had ever given a crowned royal. Then, with all the gall of a fluffy menace, he nudged my gown. Marsher! I gasped, twirling slightly away, you're wrinkling my lace. He groaned. Audibly. Groaned. Then sat down, tilted his head and gave me the saddest, most pitiful eyes known to magic and mankind. I swear. He conjured sparkles. Literal sparkles. I know what you're doing, I snapped, pointing an accusatory finger. Stop it. That cute little starlight in your eyes trick won't work on me. He blinked. Once. Twice. Then doubled down. The stars in his eyes intensified. Puppy dog level 9000. Shooting hearts. Emotional betrayal. Basically a Disney prince in beast form. Morella, comb. Quick, I whispered like a spy. She handed it over with silent dignity. I swung it at him like a fencing sword. Marsher recoiled dramatically, like I'd just shattered his trust, and turned away with the grace of a heartbroken duchess. He slumped into the corner, flopped down against the wall, and let out a groan so full of despair, I half expected violins to play. He tucked his tail over his nose and closed his eyes. I stared. Is he sulking? I asked, genuinely concerned. Nanny said, adjusting the hem of my gown. He's been like this since you told him he can't attend the ceremony. He looks like a sad little princess who just got dumped at a ball, I muttered. Just like you, Nanny added with the most casual shade known to court history. I gasped. Excuse you. I've never sulked in corners. Last week. After you lost the fencing match to Sir Ravik, Morella offered. That doesn't count. He cheated with height and muscles and stupid grace. Marsher let out another soft ugh of dramatic solidarity. Oh great, I sighed. Now he's emotionally sinking with me. Morella gently brushed a final curl into place and stepped back, smiling. Well, Your Highness. You're ready. I took one last look in the mirror, then glanced at my fur-covered drama king still slumped like the ghost of rejected suitors past. Deep breath. Time to walk into Osric Everhart's coming-of-age ceremony. Wearing the gown of a princess. The pearls of a legacy. and apparently carrying the emotional weight of a lovesick fire beast too. As I stepped out toward the grand imperial carriage waiting in the courtyard, the sunlight shimmered off the violet silk of my dress like it was personally trying to outshine me. It failed obviously, and there he was, Pop, leaning against the carriage like a royal statue carved from glacier and disapproval, arms folded, expression carved from ice. Of course. Beside him, poor Theon stood looking more nervous than a servant caught in the royal wine cellar. Papa's glare was locked on him like a heat-seeking missile. "Stay away from my daughter, you lovesick idiot. I don't want your sickness passing on to her." Theon flinched, looking wounded in 12 different emotional languages. "Your Majesty, don't you think you're being a little too much?" Papa didn't blink. "No." I sighed, sweeping down the stairs like I was gliding on clouds and years of emotional damage. "Papa definitely hates love. He probably has a royal decree for it." I approached him with a smile. "Shall we go, Papa?" He turned to look at me, and for a split second, just a flicker, I saw something shift in his expression. His eyes lingered on the tiara, the pearls, the gown. His jaw moved, like he almost said something. But before he could, Theon, ever the court disaster, blurted from the side, eyes wide with admiration, "Oh, my princess. You look so beautiful." I smirked, hands on hips. "I know." And then I turned back to Papa, raising an eyebrow with the subtlety of a daughter craving validation. "Come on, say it. Say I'm beautiful. Do it, you emotionally constipated ice monarch." I said, "Ravik," Papa said, as cold as a snowstorm with a vendetta. Ravik stepped forward and bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty?" Papa nodded toward me, voice flat. "Make sure no idiot boy even breathes near her." Ravik's face didn't change, but I could see the amusement twitching at the corner of his mouth. "Understood, Your Majesty. I'll treat them like mosquitoes." Papa grunted. I sighed again. Honestly, I'm so used to this royal overprotective nonsense, I could probably choreograph a ballroom dance around it by now. Still, I climbed into the carriage with excitement bubbling under all the silks and sighs. After all, today was Osric's big day. And more importantly, I was visiting the Everhart Mansion for the very first time. Lavinia's POV. En route to Everhart Mansion, carriage of royal expectations and flammable tension. The wheels of the imperial carriage rolled over the cobbled road like the sound of fate slowly approaching. Outside the window, the world passed in a golden blur. Sunlit trees, lazy hills, noble estates standing tall and elegant like they weren't all secretly gossiping about one another and mentally competing for best curtain color scheme of the year. But inside the carriage? Silence. Not just any silence. Royal silence. Heavy. Thick. Possibly forged in the underworld by grumpy ancestors. I sat poised, back straight, chin up, tiara perched like it was guarding the empire's GDP, and slowly, subtly, glanced at Papa. There he was. So silent. Eyes like twin glaciers with a personal vendetta. Arms crossed tight, like he was ready to wrestle the entire Everhart bloodline for daring to exist. Every 5 minutes he sighed. Not the normal kind of sigh. No. Not the "ugh, I forgot my schedule" sigh. But the "I am reconsidering diplomacy as a valid form of governance" kind of sigh. Finally, because I value sanity, I broke the ice. "Papa." He turned to me slowly like a warning bell had just rung. "Don't smile too much." I blinked. "Pardon?" His jaw twitched. At that idiot air of Everhart. "Don't smile at him." My mouth twitched. Yes. I'll schedule my facial expressions accordingly." He wasn't done. Oh no. He leaned back, eyes narrowed like thunderclouds were gathering behind them. "And if he tries to release any of those sugar-coated noble boy compliments." He paused dramatically. "Pluck out his sugars." I choked. "Pluck out his, Papa." I laughed. Because what else do you do when the literal emperor of solstice goes full tyrant over poetic metaphors? That's not even a thing. You can't just pluck sugar. But Papa's glare intensified like I'd personally declared war on logic. "I am not joking." Of course not. Of course he wasn't joking. He was never joking when it came to idiot heirs, romance attempts, or anyone under the age of 20 with good hair and ambitions. Suppressing a smile, I slid closer to him, slipped my hand into his and leaned my head against his arm. "Papa," I said sweetly, "I love you so much." He didn't respond for a beat. Then, those words should belong to me. And only me. I snorted. You know, most fathers would cry tears of joy if their daughter said that. I will cry tears of rage if anyone else makes you say it. Papa. He cut me off coldly. I swear on the crown, if that Everhart boy so much as breathes in your direction with a fond expression. What will you do? Outlaw emotions. I teased. I'll outlaw him. I giggled into his sleeve. You know, for a cold-hearted tyrant you're kind of adorable. He narrowed his eyes at me. That word is banned. What, adorable? Yes. Guess what you're being right now? He said nothing. But his crossed arms crossed harder. Outside, the tall ivory towers of the Everhart estate began to peek through the treetops, glittering in the sunlight like polished ambition. Everhart Mansion, grand arrival courtyard of elegance and emotional ambushes. The imperial carriage came to a smooth stop, the wheels sighing against the polished marble driveway like they were relieved the royal tension inside had ended. A footman approached with military precision, opening the door with a bow so low, I wondered if his back had a second joint. Papa stepped down first, tall, cloaked in silver-trimmed black, with an aura so imperial the weather changed around him. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. I followed with practiced grace, gown flowing like moonlight, pearls shimmering like starlight, tiara balanced like political pressure. Every step was rehearsed, elegant, and weighed with the burden of being admired. The courtyard was already lined with nobles and staff from House Everhart. Trumpets blared somewhere. Flowers floated down like scripted snowfall. The mansion loomed ahead, grand, ancient, and gilded in pride. And then, he stepped forward. Grand Duke Gregor Everhart. Well, ex-Grand Duke. But honestly, he still walked like the walls of the mansion respected him more than its current heir, Grand Duke Regis. Distinguished. Hair silvered with age and dignity. Eyes full of memory and storm. His uniform was still polished and still commendable. He bowed low. Formal. Your Majesty, he said to Papa. Your Highness. But before Papa could grunt something cold and diplomatic, I broke ranks. Because protocol is temporary. Grandpas are forever. Especially when you're seeing him after ages, he usually stays at the borders, commanding distant legions and looking grumpy under snowfall. Letters arrive and stories float through camp messengers, but this was the first time I'd seen him in forever. Grandpa. I cried, skirts rustling as I rushed forward and practically threw my arms around him. Grandpa Gregor startled, blinking like someone had set off fireworks in his ceremonial silence. But then his arms came up, gentle, steady and strong, and he returned the hug with a pat on my back. Why, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Little princess. You've grown tall. I beamed. Really? I asked like it was the highest compliment I'd ever received. He nodded with a soft chuckle, and I immediately turned to Papa like I'd won a personal battle. Did you hear that, Papa? Papa scoffed without missing a beat. Still shorter than me. Right. It's Papa. He would rather declare war on poetry than admit I'm growing up. Grandpa Gregor let out a rumbling laugh and looked at Papa, one brow raised. She still throws herself into hugs, I see. Papa's arms folded tighter. She throws herself into many dangerous things. That's why I'm here. Grandpa Gregor smiled. I didn't know affection was considered a political threat now. It is, Papa said flatly. Especially when she's growing up too fast and smiling at too many Everharts. I rolled my eyes and leaned into Grandpa's stage whispering, this is why Papa's hair is always stressed. Grandpa smiled, patted my head like I was still 5 and turned to Papa with mock solemnity. It's good to see you've grown up too, Your Majesty. Papa's jaw twitched so hard I think even the floor flinched. Shall we go inside? Grandpa asked smoothly, ever the diplomat with a wink tucked behind every word. I nodded eagerly. Yes, please. And with that, the doors to Everhart's grand banquet hall opened before us, gleaming with golden chandeliers, silk banners, and enough polished marble to make a statue cry. Let the chaos of high society begin. Everhart Estate, Grand Banquet Hall. I stood at the raised balcony area overlooking the grand banquet hall. The view was stunning. Chandeliers like frozen stars, tables dripping in silver and roses, and noble families draped in silk and secrets. And girls. So many girls. All around Osric's age. Give or take a powdered eyelash. I narrowed my eyes, casually sipping from a crystal goblet of sparkling cider while silently judging every debutante scanning the ballroom for a tall, brooding heir in need of lifelong devotion. Honestly, the way they fluttered their fans and giggled behind gloves. Were they here to celebrate Osric or audition for Duchess? Papa stood beside me like a frozen monument of intimidation, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the crowd like he expected someone to throw a flirtation grenade. And, well, a smooth voice slithered in. I thought you wouldn't come. I turned just in time to see Grand Duke Regis, emerging from behind a velvet-draped column like a smirking ghost of arrogance past. Papa didn't even blink. Regis smiled wider. At least, you're here. At my son's coming-of-age celebration. A little civil courtesy, no? Papa's voice was colder than the wine being served. And yet, I am the emperor. So don't tell me what I should or should not attend. Classic Papa. If icy glares were an Olympic sport, he'd have 5 golds and a dictatorship. Theon awkwardly stepped forward with his usual too bright grin. Maybe, we can all not argue here, he offered hopefully. Papa's head turned. Fully. Dangerously. I thought I told you, he said, voice low, to stay at least 10 inches away from my daughter. I am 10 inches away from her. Theon said, stepping back in panic. Papa squinted. Measured with his eyes like a hawk preparing to strike. You're 8 inches away from her. What? I sighed, folding my arms. Sometimes I wonder who's the actual child here. Ravik chuckled behind me and Grand Duke Regis turned toward Papa. And what's this? Why exactly must poor Theon stay away from the princess? Papa's eye twitched. Just a little. But it was the kind of twitch that meant doom. He's sick, Papa declared. Theon gasped. I am not sick. I am in love. Papa scoffed. Exactly. That's the same thing. Grand Duke Regis twinkled. Yes, twinkled. Like someone had whispered a scandal into his wine glass. Well, he said, practically glowing like he'd won a Nobel lottery. Finally. The love fairies have landed on the cold marble of the Imperial Palace. Love fairies? Did I heard that right? What does that even mean? And why is he so excited? Papa turned his head slowly. I swear the candlelight dimmed. If I ever see those fairies, he said, voice dipped in menace, I'll behead them with my own hands. I sighed, long and dramatic. Am I the only sane one here? I looked around the room. Apparently not. Because the nobles, every single one of them, were standing stiff as marble statues, clutching goblets, fans, and composure like lifelines. They weren't just bearing this scene. They were surviving it. Visibly. Some looked confused. Most looked terrified. And then, a trumpet sounded. The massive golden doors at the far end of the hall swung open. Finally, Osric Everhart made his entrance. The chatter dropped to a hush. He walked in, poised, composed, dressed in royal navy with silver embroidery that shimmered like starlight stitched into cloth. His hair was neatly swept back, his expression calm, but his eyes? They looked tired for some reason. Quietly worn, like someone carrying a weight no one else could see. And for one breathless moment, they locked on mine. And in that exact instant, his eyes went cold. Too cold. Like winter shutters slamming shut. Like he recognized me, and wished he hadn't. I didn't breathe. Not even a blink. Because whatever that look was, it wasn't royal. It was personal. Did something happen? I muttered to myself. Lavinia's POV. Everhart Banquet Hall. Seconds after the silence. It lasted for only a moment. A flicker. That glacial coldness in Osric's eyes. Sharp, unfamiliar, locked with mine like winter testing the waters of spring. And then, it vanished. In the next breath his gaze warmed. The frost melted. And he smiled faintly, politely. Almost too quickly. Almost like it had never happened. But I saw it. I know I saw it. Right? Did I imagine that? I muttered under my breath, blinking as if my lashes could scrub away uncertainty. Applause rippled across the banquet hall like a perfectly rehearsed overture. Polished nobles clapped, delicate gloves muffling sound into elegance, fans fluttering like painted butterflies. The orchestra struck up a note, light, regal, charmingly harmless. But my heart was still stuck on that one cold breath. Was I the only one who noticed? Osric walked forward, every step measured, noble and formal. His expression was the kind painted onto portraits of young heirs, calm, princely and slightly bored. And then he stopped before us and bowed low. "Greetings to His Majesty, and Your Highness," he said with a grace that made it sound like he'd been greeting rulers since the cradle. Papa scoffed like Osric had insulted the sun. But I smiled, choosing to act like everything was perfectly normal. "Happy birthday, Osric." He smiled wider this time. "Thank you, Lavi." Papa's eyes narrowed with the slow, ancient force of imperial thunderclouds gathering over a battlefield. Osric faltered mid-word. "I mean, Your Highness." I raised an eyebrow. Close call. From the side, Grand Duke Regis was already smiling like he'd just witnessed his favorite court comedy. With a flourish worthy of a stage actor, he stepped toward the center of the dais and raised his jeweled hand. "Honored guests," he called, his voice smooth and magnified, "lords and ladies of the Empire. Thank you for joining us on this magnificent occasion." He gestured to Osric beside him with a proud, sweeping motion, like unveiling a rare tapestry or an antique weapon. "Today marks my son's 16th year, his coming of age as heir of House Everhart." A fresh round of applause rose from the crowd, this time warmer and more sincere. Regis continued, clearly loving every second. "As tradition demands, he will begin his noble duties immediately, assisting in estate affairs, overseeing Everhart land councils." Osric stood tall beside him, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "And of course," Regis added dramatically, "he will now lead the Everhart Knights as their official first commander in training." The crowd gasped and clapped. The crowd cheered louder, everyone rising to toast his new title, his bright future and possibly his cheekbones. Golden goblets clinked. Fans fluttered harder. Girls tittered like he'd just proposed to all of them with his smile. Me. I clapped along politely. A perfect princess. A vision in violet. And then Grand Duke Regis stepped up beside his son. His voice oozed smug pride like honey sliding off a dagger. "Pai son," he declared, resting a firm hand on Osric's shoulder. "A celebration should begin as all great ones do, with elegance, tradition, and your first official dance." Then he turned slowly, so slowly, toward us. More specifically toward Papa. And smiled like a man holding a winning card and a vendetta. "With Princess Lavinia." "Oh no." Papa twitched. "Oh, that's not the right word." Papa glitched. Like a royal statue malfunctioning under extreme emotional pressure. I could see the vein in his temple begin to pulse. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened, and I swear the entire Everhart floor braced itself for impact. But then Grandpa Gregor, standing near him with serene calm, raised a single brow. That was it. Just a brow. And miraculously, Papa didn't punch Regis. Yet. Instead he folded his arms so tightly across his chest it looked like he was trying to become a wall. Meanwhile, Osric turned to me with a princely composure I hadn't seen before. The frost from earlier? Gone. Warmth had returned like he'd dipped in sunlight before this moment. He extended his hand toward me with a courteous bow. "Your Highness," he said, voice smooth and laced with just enough charm to make nearby debutantes faint. "May I have this dance?" I blinked. Then smiled back, matching his formality with a touch of self-deprecating chaos. "If I step on your foot, please bear it nobly." Osric actually laughed. A soft, genuine chuckle that earned another round of sighs from the girls behind us. "I'll consider it an honor, Your Highness." I placed my hand in his and let him lead me down the few short steps onto the marble floor of the grand banquet hall. The crowd parted like silk curtains, opening up a space where the golden chandeliers shimmered above us like stars holding their breath. The orchestra adjusted. Strings trembled. And then, music. Soft, elegant, sweeping. We took position in the center of the room. Osric bowed. I curtsied. Eyes watched from every direction like hawks judging a romantic play. And then we moved. Turn. And, dear heavens, I didn't trip. Osric was a graceful dancer, his steps sure, confident, and unshaken even when I nearly hesitated on a spin. "You're doing fine," he murmured under his breath, lips barely moving. "Not a single toe crushed so far." I grinned. "There's still time." He spun me gently, and as I twirled back into his hold, I caught the audience's reaction. They gasped. Literal gasps. Like someone had dumped stardust on the floor. Nobles leaned forward. A few girls clutched their hearts. Lady Evelyn, I swear, wiped a tear, and Theon looked at her with all the love sparkles. Even the chandeliers seemed to glow a little brighter in approval. Oh no, I whispered with a smile. We're aesthetically pleasing. Osric smirked. It's dangerous, I know. Papa's going to have a diplomatic breakdown. Should we call for Sir Ravik to mediate? Too late. He's already counting weapons in his head. Osric chuckled, twirling me again before stepping in closer for the second part of the dance. Slower, more fluid. For a moment we were silent. Just steps. Just music. Just the two of us. But there was something about the way he held himself. The way his smile stayed fixed but the corners of his eyes tightened. Like he was keeping something hidden. Something heavy. You okay? I asked, low and casual, like a secret slipping through silk. He looked at me. Really looked. And the smile stayed. But the silence answered louder than words. I am now, he said eventually. And that was almost worse than a lie. The final spin came. We turned once, twice, and stopped with practiced grace. Applause erupted like fireworks. Cheers, clinks, whispers, and stunned sighs rippling across the room like musical notes from a royal dream. I smiled politely, glancing around with that graceful royalty, nod-eyed perfected. And then, something shifted. A gasp, sharp and sudden, echoed from the left side of the ballroom. Another followed. Then hush. An eerie, flawless hush. The kind of silence that didn't feel polite. It felt profound. I blinked, confused. Huh? What's wrong with them? I turned to ask Osric, only to find he wasn't beside me. He was kneeling. One knee pressed to the polished marble floor, his head bowed low. In his hand he gripped the hilt of a sword I hadn't even realized he'd drawn. Sleek, silver, ceremonial. Its blade shimmered in the golden light, etched with the sigil of House Everhart, rune ink glowing faintly like it had been awakened by purpose. Osric. I whispered, blinking hard, heart thudding in my ears. What are you doing? He didn't look up. Instead he lowered the blade, slowly, and laid it at my feet. The entire ballroom inhaled as one. From the upper dais I heard a chair scrape, then thunderous, sharp footsteps. Of course. He was descending fast, expression carved from fury and confusion. Grand Duke Regis, Grandpa Gregor, and other followed in his wake like a tidal court crash. But then, Osric's voice rang out. Steady. And sharp with something terrifyingly powerful. Devotion. Before the Empire and the blood of my house. His head rose. His eyes met mine. Gone was the soft charm, the elegant air trained to smile and bow. What looked back at me now was something ancient. Fierce. I vow myself in service to Her Highness, Crown Princess Lavinia Devereux or Illyrian Empire. A collective gasp. Not court scandal gasp. No, sacred oath, royal lore kind of gasp. The kind that made courtiers remember legends. Prophecies. Power. My breath hitched. Osric pressed his sword lower, hilt to the floor, blade angled to me. A knight's offer. A vow. To protect her even from shadows unseen. To follow her voice even when the winds rebel. To shield her heart, even if it breaks mine. The marble beneath us almost trembled with shifting gowns, startled nobles and shocked hearts. He didn't blink. Didn't flinch. From this day forward I, Osric of Everhart, heir to my house, pledge fealty not to crown, not to law, not to lineage, but to her. Silence. Not a single breath moved the room. Even the orchestra was frozen. Bows still mid-air, flutes paused like statues. I was frozen too. Osric had just offered his life to me. Papa's voice came next, quiet. Dangerous. A blade hidden in calm. You. He stepped forward beside me, eyes like forged steel. What exactly do you think you're doing? Grandpa Gregor staggered down the final step, face pale. Osric, this is not a game. You know what an oath in front of a royal means, don't you? Osric turned his head slightly, and the edge in his voice was as sharp as the sword he'd just laid down. Yes, Grandpa. I know exactly what it means. Regis scowled. Then don't speak as if it's a... It means, Osric cut in calm and clear, that I offer my life. My future. My duty. To her. It means I take her safety as my cause, her honor as my shield, and her name as my command. The room was still reeling. Papa's eye twitched so hard even the floor flinched. But before he could thunder out another decree, I took a step forward, clutching my hands to my chest. Then, why? I asked softly. Why would you do this, Osric? He looked up, his gaze softer now but no less intense. No less real. Because, Your Highness, he said, voice laced with emotion, I would stand before any blade drawn against you. Not because I must, but because I want to. And just like that, he wasn't just Osric Everhart anymore. Not the noble heir. Not the princely figure with impeccable posture and polite smiles. Not any main lead of the novel. He was something else. Someone else. A vow wrapped in skin. A storm behind steady eyes. I stood there, heart stammering against the tightness in my ribs, as the world spun softly around me. The nobles stared. The orchestra held its breath. Even Papa went quiet, like the world had tilted 1 degree too far to remain still. But in all that silence, only one question screamed in my mind. Why? Why is this happening? Osric was never meant to swear any kind of oath to me. What changed? Lavinia's POV. Banquet hall, where vows become history. The silence stretched. So did the tension. Even the chandeliers seemed to lean in as if the palace itself was holding its breath. No orchestra. No murmurs. No movement, except one. Osric. Still kneeling. Still holding his sword, offered with both hands like an ancient rite brought back to life. Me. I wasn't sure if I was breathing. My fingers trembled just enough for me to feel it. Everyone was watching. Everyone. Nobles, knights, servants, even the tapestries, I swear. And then, Lavinia. Papa's voice. Cold. Commanding. Familiar. But this time it held something else. Something I couldn't name. I turned slowly. He didn't look at me. His gaze was fixed on Osric like he wanted to burn through the boy's soul. Then he spoke. Do it. I blinked. What? His voice didn't falter. If he wants to give his oath, accept it. Let the Empire bear witness. The words hit harder than I expected. Was he serious? Papa, the man who once threatened to outlaw romance as a concept, was telling me to accept the vow of a boy who made his eye twitch just by standing 6 inches too close? I turned back to Osric. He was already lifting the sword from the floor, holding it up with both hands, arms steady, gaze lowered, not out of submission but respect. Complete, deliberate, terrifyingly real respect. He bowed his head slightly, offering it again. Offering himself again. My heart skipped. My voice caught somewhere between my ribs and history. You still have a chance to walk away, I whispered just loud enough for him to hear. He didn't. Didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. He simply smiled, softly, almost fondly, and bowed again, silently saying, I already made my choice. Something shifted inside me then. Like a page turning in a book, I didn't realize I'd been writing my entire life. My hand reached out. I took the sword. It was warm. Not from metal. From intent. From promise. I stepped closer, the marble echoing softly beneath my steps, until I stood before him, crown princess to heir. Girl to boy. Shielded to shield. I lifted the blade and gently rested its flat against his shoulder. First the right. Then the left. My voice was quiet. But it didn't shake. By the blood of Everhart and the will of Valerian, I began, eyes on his bowed head. I, Lavinia Devereux, accept your oath. Osric's fingers tightened slightly against his knee. From this moment you are my sworn shield, I continued, words flowing like a river I didn't know I could speak from. My sword in shadow. My guard in light. My strength where I falter. And my silence when I cannot speak. A murmur rippled through the hall. Kept going. You will not answer to the court. Nor the crown. Only to me. I lowered the sword, the blade now pointed to the floor between us. I accept your vow, Osric of Everhart, and I place my trust in your hands. The room erupted, but not in sound. In tension. In disbelief. Osric finally looked up, and at that moment our eyes locked. Again. But this time, it was different. There was something in his gaze. Something sharp. Something bright. Something that shimmered like steel dipped in moonlight. Beautiful but dangerous. It hit my chest like a forgotten name whispered in a dream. Unfamiliar. Heavy. Intimate. And I felt it, not just in my breath but in my bones. This wasn't just a vow. This was a shift. A turning point. A stone dropped into the center of a still lake, and the ripples? They were only just beginning. There was something behind those eyes. Something he wasn't saying. A secret pressed into the corners of his soul, kept quiet, locked behind princely smiles and perfectly timed nods. A truth he carried alone. He looked at me like I was the center of something. And yet, I had no idea what. Behind us, the silence of the hall slowly started to crumble. Murmurs. Whispers. A few uneasy shuffles. But the weight in the air hadn't lifted, not fully. It clung to the chandeliers. To the tapestries. To the very breath of the empire watching us. And then Papa exhaled. Slowly. Too slowly. He turned without a word and walked away. Ticked, annoyed. No, pissed. Like he wanted to unsheath every sword in the room and stab the silence itself. But he didn't say anything. He just walked. Because in our world, an oath isn't just a pretty gesture. It's not a poetic flourish or romantic display. It's not flowers. It's not dances. It's not fluttering fans. No. In the Empire of Valerian, an oath is law. And in the simplest, most brutal terms, it means, I am holding Osric on a leash from now on. A leash that only I can touch. Only I can command. Only I can release. From now on, whatever happens to me, he bears it. If I lie, he answers. If I betray, he bleeds. If I fall, he might never get up again. And if I, for even 1 second, become the reason for a crime or a war, he will be punished for it. That's what the vow means, and no one can unbind it. Not even him. The words may have sounded beautiful, strong, noble. But in truth, they're dangerous. They're deadly. They are like a flower wrapped in thorns. And every step we take together from here on might bleed. And the terrifying part? In the novel I remember, Osric never made an oath to anyone. Not even the heroine. Not even when she saved him. Not even when they fell in love. He was proud. Controlled. A sword with no leash. A wolf with no master. He was the one people swore to, not the other way around. The only person who ever knelt and pledged fealty in the entire empire was Ravik. To my papa. But Osric? He was never meant to kneel. Never meant to give his sword. Never meant to say my name in an oath. So why? Why did he do it? What changed? What was it about me that made him rewrite the script? The answer wasn't written in the pages I knew. The answer wasn't in the prophecies or plot lines. No. The answer lived only in his eyes, and whatever it was, he wasn't telling me yet. 10 days later. Lavinia's private garden, royal afternoon. It had been 10 days. 10 entire days since Osric Valerius Everhart knelt before me like some ancient knight from a forgotten legend and vowed his life to mine. 10 days since the banquet ended in shocked gasps, frozen violins, and Papa needing an emergency diplomatic intervention. Read. Grandpa Gregor handing him a glass of wine and silently judging him into calming down. And yet, we're still in the headlines. I stared at the newest edition of the Solstice Gazette, the headline so bold it practically screamed. Breaking. The future heir of Everhart takes life-binding oath to the crown princess. I sighed and dropped the paper dramatically onto the garden table. Still discussing it, I muttered, popping a heart-shaped cookie into my mouth like it was an anti-anxiety pill. 10 days, Osric. 10 days. Do you ever plan to give the Empire a break? Across from me, the aforementioned problem child, Osric Everhart, professional vow swearer and part-time script destroyer, sat calmly under the shade of a pear blossom tree, sipping tea and flipping pages of a thick law book like he hadn't publicly upended the Empire's entire romantic subplot. He looked up at me with perfect, unbothered serenity. Did you say something, Lavi? Yes. I said, are you normal? Just look at him sipping tea calmly and reading a book on imperial law. Like he hadn't just altered the fate of an entire fictional world. I leaned forward, hands folded, lips twitching. So, are you ever going to tell me why you took that oath? He didn't even flinch. No. Ugh. I groaned, leaning back in my chair like the world betrayed me. You are so stubborn. He looked up and smiled with that calm, infuriating charm. Thanks for the praise, Your Highness. Gods. He's impossible. I sighed and stretched my legs beneath the table, staring up at the blue sky peeking through the trees. Now I really wonder how he's going to meet the actual female lead of this story. Because in the original story, Osric only met her during the war. He was sent to the Northern Front, and that's where he met her after the war while he roamed some village. The girl meant to defrost his icicle heart. Bold, bright, unapologetically herself. The girl who wasn't afraid of his coldness. The one who fell in love with him at first sight. The one who changed him. The girl who was always meant to become the Duchess of Everhart in the end. Elenia Valkyrin. The girl who is sharp-witted and magnetic in every room she walks into. The true heroine. The real one. But now Osric can't even go to war without mine or Papa's permission, because of the oath. Because of me. Now he's bound to me. By sword. By vow. By choice. And the worst part? He doesn't even know what he's done. He doesn't know he was never supposed to kneel in front of the villainess. He doesn't know he's completely turned the story into something else entirely. I mean, I know the story's already changed so much. I was supposed to be the neglected daughter. The forgotten royal. The villainess. But instead, Papa adores me. The Empire whispers my name with reverence instead of disdain. I'm not hated. I'm not cast aside. No. I'm starting to wonder. This story has already changed too much to ever go back. The end of Season 1. The beginning of Season 2. Imperial Palace. The air was too quiet. Quiet like a graveyard. But not just any graveyard. A graveyard so cursed, even ghosts refused to linger. Even monsters feared to whisper. The great imperial throne room, once golden, radiant, filled with sunlight and power, was drowned in blood. Not stained. Drenched. Blood coated the walls. The floor. The carved crest of the empire was etched into the marble. Even the throne itself, the sacred seat of 1,000 years of rule, was painted red like a warning from the gods. Bodies lay strewn like broken constellations across the hall. Maids. Servants. Nobles. Guards. And at the center of it all, Marquis Everett and Selim. Their bodies were twisted, shattered in ways no human body should ever bend. They looked like dolls dropped from a great height. No grace, no dignity. Just ruin. Crimson pools shimmered around their feet, spreading slowly, greedily, like the palace floor itself was drinking death. Their eyes stared upward, empty. Forever locked on a ceiling that would never offer mercy again. And in the middle of it all, kneeling, Osric Valerius Everhart. Barefoot. Bloodied. A gash above his right eye was still weeping scarlet down his cheek. His knees dug into the marble, his hands limp at his sides. But he looked hollow. Like someone had carved the soul out of him and left only flesh behind. His body trembled, but not with fear. No, there was no fear left. Just stillness. Stillness so deep it was almost inhuman. And standing before him, Emperor Cassius Devereux. But this wasn't a ruler. Not a father. Not a man. This was a monster in royal skin. Drenched in gore. Hands shaking from rage. Eyes so hollow, so red with grief and fury they looked like voids cracked open. He was no longer human. He was lost. Vengeance. Wrath incarnate. And he raised his sword. Slow. Heavy. Shaking not from weakness, but from the effort it took to not strike immediately. You. His voice was jagged iron. Barely human. I trusted her to you. Osric didn't lift his head. Cassius stepped closer, the blade gleaming under shattered sunlight. I gave her to you. My jewel. My pride. My daughter. And you, his voice broke just a flicker. You dared to betray her for someone else. The Emperor took a slow, seething step forward. You don't deserve to live. Osric finally raised his head. Slowly. Painfully. His lips were cracked. His hair, matted with blood, clung to his forehead like chains. There was no crown. No armor. No regal posture. He didn't look like the Grand Duke. Didn't look like a commander. Didn't even look like a man. He looked like a ghost wearing the shell of a boy. A graveyard of what he used to be. I never wanted her to die. His voice was dry, like it had been dragged through the dirt with him. I thought, he faltered. I thought I was freeing her. From me. I thought I was saving her from them. A laugh escaped him, broken and bitter. Almost insane. But I failed her. A tremble. I failed you. He stared blankly at the blood beneath him. I should have swallowed the poison she was given. Oh. I should have run away before it began. I should have stood between her and everything that ever wanted to harm her, even if it meant losing myself. His throat closed as the words caught fire in his lungs. I should have protected her from the very beginning. Then, without warning, he lurched forward and gripped Cassius's sword with his bare hand. Blood trickled down his wrist. But Osric didn't even blink. He pulled the blade toward his own throat. "You're right, Your Majesty." His voice cracked, hollow and certain. "I really deserve to die." He lifted his gaze, not defiant but surrendered. "And if there's anything left of me worth damning." His breath hitched. "Then let me offer it to her. All of it." He knelt deeper, sword against skin. "I only wish." His voice trembled like a boy begging the stars. "I wish I could see her again. Just once. Just to kneel before her. Apologize. And give her my soul." Cassius stared down at him, eyes no longer belonging to a man. No warmth. No forgiveness. Only cold red rage. He raised the sword higher. "If that ever happens." The Emperor's voice was low. "Farrell. I will make sure to crush that pathetic soul of yours myself." The sword came down. Equals 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 equals. Osric's POV. Everhard Estate. Dawn 4 years after the oath. Gasp. The same dream. The same cursed images. Why do I keep having those dreams, where I feel like losing her? I jolted upright. Lungs burning, chest tight, sheets tangled around my legs like restraints I couldn't shake off. My heart thudded in my ears, so loud it drowned out the morning silence. I pressed my palm to my forehead, damp with cold sweat. Gods. Knock. Knock. The door opened a second later and in stepped my butler, an older man with silver-streaked hair and tired, kind eyes. Hadrian, loyal to House Everhart since before I could read. He bowed, a practiced motion, yet I could see the crease of concern on his brow. "Good morning, my lord." I nodded faintly, still catching my breath. My hands felt numb. Hadrian approached and placed a towel in my hands, his voice soft. "Was it the nightmare again?" I dried my face in silence, then nodded. "Yes," I murmured. "This time, longer." Hadrian moved quietly across the room, pouring water into a glass. He handed it to me and I took it gratefully. My throat felt scorched from whatever realm I'd just returned from. He hesitated, then asked carefully, "Was it about Princess Lavinia again?" My grip tightened slightly on the glass. I turned my gaze to the window, where the morning mist still curled around the Everhart hills like ghostly fingers. "Yes," I said. But this time, it felt different. My voice lowered. It felt like I really lost her. The words left a hollow echo inside my chest. Hadrian frowned, stepping forward slightly. "My lord, you've been having these dreams since your coming-of-age ceremony. It's already been 4 years. I truly believe you should consult a—" "No," I said a little too quickly. I stood, pushing aside the remnants of the nightmare with a forced steadiness. "I'm fine, Hadrian." "My lord." I said I'm fine. I reached for the robe draped over the foot of my bed and shrugged it on with rigid calm. I needed to breathe. I needed to move. I needed her. "I have to leave soon," I said, striding toward the adjoining chamber. "The princess will be waiting." Hadrian bowed, dutifully masking his worry behind manners. "Of course, my lord. I'll have the bath prepared at once." I paused at the threshold of the bathing chamber, my fingers brushing the carved wood of the doorway. My gaze wandered across the room, past the steam rising in elegant spirals, past the gold-veined marble tiles, until it landed on the mirror. My reflection stared back at me. Hair disheveled. Eyes dull. Shadows etched like bruises beneath them. A ghost wearing the name Osric Everhart. I inhaled slowly and stepped inside. The warmth of the bath enveloped me as I sank into the water, the surface rippling gently against my skin. Scented oils floated like dreams in the steam. Lavender, rosemary, maybe something citrus. It's warm. I murmured under my breath, closing my eyes. And yet, it didn't help. My muscles didn't loosen. My chest didn't unclench. My mind didn't quiet. There was no comfort. No peace. Only that familiar ache curling beneath my ribs, just below the place where the dreams always struck. Because it hadn't started yesterday. It hadn't started this week. Well, it all began 4 years ago. Right before my coming-of-age ceremony. That's when I had the first one. A vision. A nightmare. Prophecy, call it what you will. But ever since that night they've haunted me. Like echoes from another life. Like whispers clawing through locked doors in my head. They weren't just dreams. They felt like memories. A memory I was never supposed to lose. A truth buried so deep inside me, it only bleeds out in sleep. And always, it's her. The one face I cannot lose. The one name that echoes louder than the screams. Princess Lavinia. At first I dismissed it. A meaningless dream. A fragment of pressure. Growing up in the shadows of legacy and expectation. But the fear of losing her, it crawled under my skin. It dug in like a curse. And then, the day I saw her after that first nightmare, at my coming-of-age ceremony, standing beneath chandeliers and surrounded by light, I felt it. I felt alive again. Like breathing wasn't just an obligation. That's when I knew. It's not too late. Not yet. I can protect her. I can be her sword. I can give her everything, even the soul I don't know how to save. That's why I took the vow. Not for duty. Not for power. But to remind myself of the only thing that truly matters. That I have someone to protect. Even if the dreams are prophecy. Even if they're warnings dressed in blood and fate. I will make sure none of them come true. Not while I'm still breathing. Not while I still carry a sword. Not while she still smiles at the morning light. Whatever those dreams are, future or past, I will defy them all. I have her. And I won't let go. Osric's POV. Everhard Estate. Did the messengers arrive? My voice cut through the silence as I fastened the last strap of my cloak. Hadrian appeared at my side with a bow. No, my lord. The investigator hasn't sent word yet. I paused, fingers resting on the polished silver clasp. It's taking too long. Hadrian's sigh was long-suffering, the kind of sound someone makes when they're used to your impossible standards but still holding on to the hope you might grow patience like a garden herb. My lord, you only gave him 2 days. I turned, raising a brow. And? Hadrian folded his hands in front of him. You tasked him with reviewing every attack on the crown princess. Every security breach. Every suspicious death, accident, or vanishing made since she was born. That's nearly 2 decades of sealed records, half of which are probably hidden under noble bribes and bureaucratic cobwebs. It takes time. I muttered, adjusting my gloves. Looks like I found another useless investigator. My lord. Find someone else. My lord, he said a bit more urgently this time. At least give him 10 days. I paused. Turned. He was staring at me like I'd just threatened to burn down the royal archives with a single candle. There was pleading in his expression. Genuine, quiet pleading. I exhaled slowly. All right. 10 days. Relief flooded his face. Thank you, my lord. But if he doesn't bring me answers, I warned, slipping my sword into its sheath, I'll personally drag him through the Everhart mines until he finds them. And make him read every page aloud. Understood, Hadrian said, trying very hard not to smile. I stepped past him, heading toward the corridor. My boots clicked softly against the polished stone. Since the nightmares began, there were 2 faces that kept returning in blood and shadow. Marquis Everett. And Selim. Always lurking. Always watching. Always standing too close to Princess Lavinia. If these dreams truly were prophecy as I feared, then every past attack on the princess might be more than coincidence. And if I'm right, if the patterns align, then Marquis Everett isn't just dangerous. He's treasonous. And Selim? That snake is already coiled too close to the throne. Too close to her. Always lurking around her. Always smiling that rehearsed, empty smile beside the princess. Always speaking with the kind of polished charm that masks a blade. I've seen men like him. They don't swing swords. They poison wells. And yet, There's something even more unsettling than his presence. Something I haven't said out loud. The Emperor knows. I can feel it. His Majesty. Emperor Cassius Devereaux may be many things. Unforgiving, merciless, terrifying on a bad day, but he is not blind. So why? Why allow Selim to remain by Princess Lavinia's side? Why allow him to duel with her every single day? Why give permission for a confrontation that could have gone very, very wrong? The more I think about it, the more it knots in my chest like a tangled noose. One I can't unravel. Sigh. Everything feels messier than it should be, I mumbled under my breath. As I passed through the marble corridor toward the exit hall, familiar voices drifted toward me. Loud ones. Gods, that idiot. He's banned every romantic candidate from the Imperial Palace. That was Father. Shouting again. I turned the corner to find him waving a rolled-up document like a battle flag. Across from him, Grandfather Gregor sat calmly in the courtyard gazebo, sipping tea with all the serenity of a man watching a staged opera. He's just protecting his child, and he didn't ban Theon and Lady Evelyn, Grandpa Gregor said without looking up, his tone as dry as the winter vineyards. But he made sure. She interacts with them less. If this continues, Father huffed, collapsing into a chair beside him, the princess is going to stay single until she's 70. Ha ha ha. Grandfather chuckled. I never imagined him turning into that kind of father. But he was always unpredictable under pressure. And parenthood, dear boy, is pressure distilled. I stepped into the light, drawing their attention. Father noticed first. You're leaving already? He asked, eyebrows rising. I nodded once. Yes. The princess is expecting me. He leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. Humph, loyal as ever. Then, something shifted in his face. The teasing dropped for just a moment, replaced by a flicker of quiet pride. The kind I rarely saw from him unless I returned from a successful campaign or refused to die in a duel. You did good, Osric, he said. By taking that oath. I may not understand why you did it, but I'm proud of you. That surprised me. A little. Not because I needed his approval, but because, maybe I did. Just a little. I nodded. Thank you, Father. Then turned on my heel and walked toward the awaiting carriage. As I had a vow to keep. A throne to protect. And a girl waiting at the end of 100 conspiracies and 1,000 whispered threats. Princess Lavinia. The future of this empire. Imperial Palace later. As my carriage rolled through the eastern gates of the Imperial Palace, I didn't need an escort to guide me. My steps already knew where they wanted to go. To her. The palace grounds were already buzzing with activity. Knights drilling in the courtyard, ministers scurrying like panicked pigeons, and a few poor new recruits throwing up behind a hedge from morning sword training. Imperial discipline at its finest. But beyond all that, there she was. In her private garden. Princess Lavinia. Sitting like a fallen star on her cushioned bench. A soft breeze tousling her hair as sunlight crowned her in gold. She had a book open in one hand, a half-eaten macaron in the other, and a steaming teacup balanced on the table beside her, along with 3 more already emptied, as if the tea had wronged her and she was seeking revenge one cup at a time. And on her lap, Marshmallow. The oversized divine beast of a cat, with a tail that twitched like it had royal blood, rested his fluffy head on her lap as she absent-mindedly stroked his ears. He looked like he had ascended into paradise. And I just stood there for a moment. Watching. Observing. Breathing in the quiet kind of calm that only she seemed to carry with her. Princess Lavinia wasn't graceful like a court-trained lady. She was chaotic. Unfiltered. A whirlwind in a silk dress. But gods, she was beautiful. In the kind of way stories never get right. In the kind of way that makes the world feel less cruel for just existing near her. And just as I was letting that thought warm something in my chest. Shall we go for a duel? Selim's voice cut through the air like a fork on a porcelain plate. I twitched. Of course he was here, that bastard snake. He was standing beside her chair, annoyingly close, with that smug little glint in his eye, like he thought breathing next to royalty counted as a skill. If I had the authority, I'd throw him out of the palace. No, out of the empire. Preferably catapulted. Lavinia didn't even lift her head. She flipped a page, took another macaron, and replied in the laziest drawl I'd ever heard from her. Nope. I'm on break. Selim blinked. Break. She popped the whole macaron in her mouth, chewed dramatically, then nodded with full seriousness. Yes. Life break. Emotionally on vacation. Spiritually off duty. Mentally resigned. You know, the usual. He blinked again. You say that like you've been slaving away in a mine. She finally looked up at him, eyes deadpan, voice dry as the desert. I am. Since the day I was born, I've been working nonstop. Breathing, existing, dodging assassins, studying diplomacy, swordplay, perfect posture, smiling for hours, pretending to care about politics, surviving my father, surviving tea parties, and surviving you. I choked back a laugh. Selim looked like someone had just slapped him with a fish. Even Marshmallow flicked his tail like he agreed. I took a step forward, unable to help myself. That sounds like a rather grueling life, Your Highness. She turned to me and her entire face lit up. Not like fireworks. No, more like sunrise. Soft. Slow. Real. Osric, she said, my name falling from her lips like the most natural thing in the world. You're late. I bowed with practiced ease, one hand across my chest. My apologies, Your Highness. I had some urgent matters to attend to. She squinted at me, pretending to be cross. All right, fine. Since you're my friend, I shall show mercy and grant you forgiveness. Witness my gentle, benevolent heart. I smiled. I am honored by such divine generosity, Your Highness. She leaned in slightly, glanced around like she was about to commit treason, and whispered behind her hand, You can drop the formalities. Papa's not here. I chuckled. As you wish. Lavi. Her entire face lit up. That's better. And just when the moment felt as serene as morning sun on still water, Selim cleared his throat, his tone practically dripping with long suffering. Princess, don't you think you're being too much? She blinked, slowly turning her head in his direction like she was about to summon lightning. What do you mean? He gestured toward me with the subtlety of a pouting child. Exactly this. I'm your friend too, aren't I? So why does he get all the smiles and I get... He waved a hand dramatically. Frostbite. She tilted her head, blinked once, then calmly looked back at her book like he'd turned into background noise. Because, she said without even a pause, you deserve it. Her voice was flat. Frosted steel wrapped in velvet. So cold that Selim froze mid-breath. Maybe it wasn't just his body. Maybe his entire world tilted just a little, cracking beneath the weight of her dismissal. She didn't flinch, didn't soften, didn't even glance back. And maybe, just maybe, she already knew. Maybe Lavinia Devereux, Crown Princess of Valerian, knew exactly what Selim was. A snake. Coiled too close to her son. Lurking with poison behind his smiles and silk words. But even if she didn't, it didn't matter. Because I knew, and I would make sure. Every venomous thing hiding in the dark around her would be silenced. One by one. Before they ever got the chance to bite.